Good evening, dear friends. The situation at the front by the end of the 28th of June. Today, we are going to talk about the Volchansk direction, of course about the Kremen direction, about the Chapel direction. Well, let's start with the Kharkiv border area. We do not record any significant changes in the Lipetsk direction. The main fighting continues under the settlement of Glubokaya. But active hostilities continue in the Volchansk direction. The high rate of hostilities remains, especially in the western part. The northern part of Volchansk, everything that is beyond the northern Volcha River. And we will analyze this point in more detail with you. Footage was published by the AFU fighters, where they are advancing along Gagarin Street, and we have already said before that most likely there is a gray zone along this street. And so it turned out. At least a few more buildings go into the gray zone, based on the frames that were published. In other words, this is a zone of the presence of the defense forces. At the same time, Russian troops are also focusing on Pushkin Street, making their way to the factory, but if the defense forces manage to dislodge them from Pushkin and Shevchenko streets, partially where they are present, then they will really get surrounded in Volchansk, which is being talked about a lot now. It's really too early to talk about this, because there is another attack from the Russian side, that is, not only the defense force is actively conducting attacking actions, assault actions, but also the enemy. Footage of a strike on the positions of Russian troops south of Gagarin Street was published. That is, somewhere we add a gray zone, and we see the presence of the APU, but the enemy also breaks through. Tries to reach the logistics routes, take them under control, because, well, it is assumed that just in this area, the APU is transferring forces that act and do not allow them to advance to the factory. They operate along Dukovnaya Street, along Gagarin Street, moving along Cathedral Street. Therefore, they make a very big bet on it. Well, definitely against the background of the fact that only a gray zone has been added in recent days, that is, the APU managed to knock out several positions. There is already more talk that they will increase the pressure in Volchansk. First of all, of course, it will be operational and tactical aviation, but as they say, we will look at everything in fact. Will they be able to reverse the course of events with this, I mean with aerial bombs? We move on with you further. Then we have the Kopinski direction along it briefly. We continue fighting south of Olshiny, which we also talked about on the previous broadcast. In other words, the Russian troops, continue to press in the area of the same arc at the beam. And also along one of the forest belts, pressure continues in the direction of the beam. That is, they just do not slow down the pace on this segment of the front Kopinski direction. It is they who want to advance to the beam. Naturally, there are a lot of assumptions now about where they will go next, but let's be blunt. If I gave forecasts 8 or 9 out of 10 before, that is, very good, yes. That last one there was 7 out of 10 or 6 out of 10, something like that. This is still good, but it suggests that it is extremely difficult to predict the situation now. Because where it turns out, there is pressure and moments are caught. Sometimes there is an active area, it turns into positionality, but as with us in the case of the Toretsky direction, yes. There is even a very serious advance and the capture of the Noise settlement. And while in a number of other areas, absolute positionality was achieved on the battlefield. Therefore, to assume where they will go next is Petropavlovsk or Tupeshino. Believe me, it's very difficult right now, and I won't say that they have the strength in this area. That is, slow creeping is like that, yes, but it's a very long time, and you can assume anything 4 months, as they say. Active hostilities continue. In the Kremen direction, the Kremen forest, they asked me in the comments, so that I published some information from the area where Azov. The Azov fighters managed to push back Russian troops in a section up to 2 kilometers wide to a depth of 1 kilometer. And today, the Russian side published fresh footage, where they show the zone of presence of the defense forces. In other words, they confirm that this area is under the control of Azov. Therefore, those who had doubts, well, here, as they say, the Russian side itself confirms this. Well, not only from our side there is confirmation. Active military operations are continuing in this segment. They continue not only in the direction of the mass grave, but also shots are published along the road leading in a westerly direction. I would say the positional nature of the fighting, perhaps even a little more gray zones, should be added approximately in this area. Because there were clearly frames and the centers sorted out its binding. So the Apu attack was just on the edge of the junction of the red and gray zones. Therefore, there may also be the addition of a gray zone. But this is such a moment, as they say, we will consider it all in the context of time. Seversk direction. Activity in the area of Balogorovka remains. And according to Razdulovka, today the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that they managed to completely occupy the settlement. So look, today there was a summary from a soldier of the 93rd Brigade Friday on the situation in the Chasovoy direction and Kleshivka. And in general, he said such a thing that there is official news on television, at least in the Telegram channels, that Russian troops managed to drink firm the Canal microdistrict, right? He says, I didn't have one. He had no such information in the morning. As he was at lunch, when he recorded the video, he doesn't know it, so he can't comment. Look, well, in fact, he knows the situation very well. There are more complaints about the news, of course. So according to the headline, according to the information that was, in any case, we state that the enemy is present in the settlement. But that he has established full control over it, there was no such information, it was not received. The fact that he was present, with small forces, precisely clearly small, I must say, this is yes. But not even in the central part of the Razdulovka. Therefore, we will see if this is really the case within 48 hours. It should also be noted that in a number of other areas, even where Russian troops did not take a settlement or even entered it at all, they always published footage. I think such a loud statement, as in the case of the meat frying pan, it was also officially announced, it is under Stremohovka. It is not taken by the Russian troops, although officially they allegedly took it there a week ago, but it is not taken. It is not under their control, and it does not correspond at all reality. Therefore, the Russian Defense Ministry gives out a lot of things that are not really there. This is if we take there the case of the last meat frying pan, and also Nevelskaya. We are going with you further to the watch direction. We have a minus on it. We'll start with Kalinovka. There was another attack on Kalinovka, an attack just in the area of the very intersections that we talked about. Russian troops were able to stop. Therefore, we do not fix any changes, and it remains in the gray zone. And also a fighter of the 93rd Brigade commented that, well, they could not break through further. They simply could not gain a foothold at this intersection. And indeed, as many attempts as they have already made, the Russian troops, let's say more than 20 attempts, yes, they were all repelled. And they just go to the same place, which is shot, and where they are very clearly visible and expected. Therefore, as I told you, there are areas where the Russian command is really very serious, and there are areas where it makes banal mistakes. Therefore, believe me, this is a bright direction, it is very serious, and these are the mistakes. On the one hand, they would be unacceptable on their part, but on the other hand, it is very good for us. Because for sure there will be the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd time just at this intersection. For some reason I am sure of this. But at the same time, there is also a neighboring area where the enemy has an advance. This is the Canal microdistrict. Not even so much the Canal microdistrict as the Orlov tract and the outskirts of the railway. Footage was published by the Afu fighters where they attacked infantry with drone drops. And this infantry was moving just the same from the northern part of the Canal microdistrict to the Orlov tract. There was also a message from a soldier of the 93rd Brigade that they were present in this area, and were pressing in the direction of the Seversky-Donetsk-Donbass Canal. Therefore, this corresponds to the information of reality, that is, that the enemy has advanced and, unfortunately, we have visual confirmation. The situation looks conditionally as follows, but it is stated that they are deeper. I have no deeper confirmation of this information. And where exactly deeper? If to Oleg Koshevoy Street, then it would have turned out that they would have cut off the logistics of the remaining part of the Canal microdistrict. but it most likely can be just the same in the northwest direction. Although if we take into account the dynamics as a whole, then the enemy, taking into account the fact that he is stuck. Although he is making a lot of attempts to advance, there is a small block left for the construction, then it is just the same. To approach Chasovoy Street from the Orlov tract, this is a more profitable option for him than the urban type of battle. Close-range shooting battles in the building. Therefore, most likely it will continue to push in the direction of the street. That is, to hit the logistics of this micro-district as much as possible. The difficult situation remains. In short, we have a difficult one in the Chasovoy Yar Canal micro-district. Therefore, the enemy is pushing very hard. In fact, a large number of attacks are underway. As for Kleshivka, there was a message that they again managed to advance along Kleshivka itself, and again. All necessary measures were taken by the APU to prevent them from gaining a foothold. Therefore, the situation in Kleshivka remains dynamic. We remember that the APU entered the gray zone, but also did not gain a foothold. Therefore, we continue fighting in this area. And we turn to the Pokrovsky direction. Let's not go to Pokrovsky, but Toretsky. According to Toretsky, I will finish it briefly, and according to Pokrovsky, in the direction of the end, I wanted to say one moment for the end. So in an hour this information for today, in 1 hour directly from the fighter, on the very Toretsk, there were 15 air bomb attacks. That's actually a lot. And yes, in recent days, it has been said that it is burning. This literally means that the whole end is on fire, the evacuation of the population is underway. In other words, the situation has worsened a lot. And we see that the enemy has very seriously engaged tactical aviation in this direction. In other words, during the same period, we see a decrease in their activity in the Pokrovsky direction. But it increases in the neighboring one. That is, my information, or at least my thoughts, they were correct. That they do not have problems with the units of the number of aircraft, but with the pilots. Because these latest training sets, they show that they have just the same shortage. Perhaps they refuse, I don't know, this is already such a reflection, I don't go into it. But in any case, they have something to work on, but something is with the pilots. Perhaps there were losses, there were arrivals. Unknown. It's too early to talk about it yet. This is the situation we have in the Teritsky direction. So what is it? This is preparation. I just told you on the previous broadcast that Stis was a sniper with a call sign, yes. A fighter said that they were transferring to Gorlovka, that is, this is reliable information. And we knew about the movements, we said that they could be moving there, and maybe it could be the Yar direction and the Pokrov direction. But it went to Gorlovka. So they have already accumulated some forces and are conducting just the same artillery preparation. And preparation of operational and tactical aviation for further assaults. Therefore, in the coming days, we will see very serious activity in the Toretsk direction. The enemy will try to reverse the course of events. Although again there may be such a situation as in the area of work, when at least twice there was a very serious artillery preparation. But they did not start. But another thing is that they have already accumulated forces, and they have transferred them to Gorlovka. So they could put pressure on the Pokrovsky, Chasarsky direction, but they are pulling them into Gorlovka. Therefore, most likely they will try. As for the Pokrovsky direction, we will briefly analyze 2 points, 3 points rather. The first one is our Novo-Alexandrovka Sokol plot. 2 points, so to speak, Novo-Alexandrovka and Sokol. According to Novo-Alexandrovka, all the shots that were published within the red zone. Because now there are a lot of messages on the whole situation on this segment. It is clear why, because we already have a route to Konstantinovka, and moreover, the media fighters themselves recommend not using it directly from the fields, because the activity of the enemy, his reconnaissance drones, is quite high. Therefore, it is very dangerous. Well, we understand that the enemy will definitely engage in remote mining. Remote mining has shown its effectiveness, as, unfortunately, from their side, from the enemy, and from our side. We also saw that the APU was conducted remotely on the same Volchansk, it gives its effectiveness. Therefore, of course, The enemy will definitely try to hold similar events with us in this segment. Naturally, there are still a number of settlements ahead, for which there will be very heavy battles, because everyone understands perfectly well how expensive this highway is. This segment of the highway is even small, but active hostilities continue. It's too early to talk about any breakthrough, because the fighting is going on in Novo-Alexandrovka, in the area of Novo-Alexandrovka, on its outskirts. And the second moment of this section is the Falcon. Active hostilities continue. Further attempts of the enemy are present in the settlement to continue the assault operations, but now, from the information that is available, they are transferring, that is, they are pulling up forces just the same for the attack. Perhaps it was today, that is, the information is clear, it is coming late. But there is information that they pulled up just the same for the storming of the Falcon. And the last point is a clear-cut, which is according to the situation, because there is very little information. In principle, the situation with us is about like this, it visually remains. I would say, on clarification, only we have a T-shaped intersection and a turn on the beam, in the direction of the Yasnobrodovsky rate. This area remains in question for us, because there is no visual data on it. The only thing that needs to be added is that the enemy continues to show activity in the direction of the U. That is, somewhere it is mostly, of course, of a positional nature of the fighting. And it is also necessary to distance this dacha village of Donbass. Do not forget, they also direct some activity. But it is natural that now, after the APU received more shells, the number of artillery strikes has increased. They naturally take this into account, so there are zones where they switch to positionality and start activity in the neighboring area. And then they will definitely return to these areas, so there is no need to think that everything is fine so far. Managed to stabilize relatively. But it's all relative, you have to understand. Because in fact, the activity and reserves of the enemy are probably the most important moment. There are still enough of them, given the fact that they sent them to Gorlovka, and in Gorlovka, they just formed a shock fist, including armored vehicles. It is not even necessary to speak for the personnel, but for the number of armored vehicles. Therefore, in this sense, they are now reshuffling at the tactical level, shifting the emphasis, but this is temporary, in order to stretch our forces. We have no significant changes in the Kurakovsky direction. This is the situation we have, friends, at the front by the end of the 28th of June.